Close your eyes and listen to this peaceful Bible story as night falls over ancient Israel and King Saul steps quietly into the darkness, searching for answers in the silence. This calming bedtime Bible story of Saul and the Witch of Endor from 1 Samuel, chapter 28, unfolds slowly with soft narration, sacred stillness, and gentle reflection, guiding you through moonlit paths and whispered truths. Let this soothing Bible story for sleep draw you in, quiet your thoughts, and keep you listening until the final moments of deep calm. Long ago, when the hills of Israel lay quiet beneath wide evening skies, there ruled a king named Saul. He had once stood tall among the people, chosen and anointed, his heart stirred with purpose and strength. Yet now, in these later days, a great weight rested within him, heavy and unmoving, like a stone carried quietly in the chest. The land itself seemed to sense this burden, as though the wind moved more slowly and the nights lingered longer around his dwelling. Saul often found himself awake while others slept. The hours of darkness stretched before him, filled with silence that pressed close on every side. Lamps burned low in the palace, their soft light barely touching the corners of the room. Outside, the camp lay still, and the sounds of the night were few. Saul listened to the quiet, waiting for comfort, waiting for direction, yet nothing stirred. His thoughts returned again and again to the same unanswered questions. He had known the voice of the Lord once. He remembered the early days, when guidance came clearly, when obedience felt possible and the path ahead seemed plain. But now that voice was absent. Saul sought answers through prayer, lifting his heart toward heaven in the stillness, yet the heavens remained closed. Dreams did not come. The familiar assurance of the prophets did not reach him. Even the sacred practice of casting lots brought no reply. Each attempt ended in the same deep quiet, a silence that echoed within him. As the Philistines gathered their forces nearby, Saul felt the weight grow heavier still. He knew their strength and their numbers. He remembered past battles and the fear that had once been overcome by faith. Yet now, as he looked toward the coming conflict, courage did not rise within him. Instead, there was a steady ache of uncertainty. His heart trembled, not with sudden fear, but with a slow and constant unease that would not leave him. The night air often found Saul walking alone. He moved quietly through the palace halls, his steps measured and slow. Servants slept nearby, unaware of the thoughts that kept their king awake. Saul's face, once confident, now carried lines of weariness. His eyes searched the darkness as if answers might appear there, written among the shadows or carried on the wind. He thought of Samuel, the prophet who had guided him since his youth. Samuel's voice had once spoken truth without hesitation, correcting and directing with calm authority. But Samuel was gone now, laid to rest in Ramah, mourned by all Israel. Saul had mourned him deeply, feeling the loss not only of a prophet, but of a steady presence that had anchored his reign. Without Samuel, the silence felt even greater. The laws of the land were clear. Saul himself had once enforced them, removing mediums and spiritists from Israel in obedience to the Lord. At that time, the decision had felt right and firm. Now, as the night pressed in and the future remained hidden, memories of those commands returned to him, not as comfort, but as reminders of the narrowness of the path before him. Each unanswered prayer added to the stillness within Saul's heart. He waited, hoping for a sign, a whisper, or even a gentle sense of direction. But the waiting stretched on, unbroken. The stars moved slowly across the sky, marking the passing hours, while Saul remained awake, caught between what had been and what was yet to come. In the quiet, Saul's strength seemed to fade, not all at once, but gradually, like light dimming at the end of the day. His heart longed for reassurance, yet found only the steady rhythm of his own breathing in the dark. The weight he carried was not spoken aloud, but it shaped every thought, every step, and every moment of waiting. And so the king remained there in the silence, listening for a voice that did not answer, standing at the edge of a choice yet unseen, as the night of Israel held its breath around him. Beyond the quiet chambers of the king, the land of Israel rested beneath the open sky. The camp lay spread across gentle slopes and level ground, tents arranged with care and familiarity, as they had been many times before. Fires burned low, their embers glowing softly, giving off a faint warmth and a calm, steady light. Above them, the stars watched in silence, countless and unmoving, set deep into the dark canvas of the night. The air moved gently through the camp, carrying the scent of earth and grass. A light breeze passed between the tents, brushing against canvas and rope, producing a soft, almost rhythmic sound. It was the kind of wind that did not disturb sleep, but seemed to guard it, flowing evenly through the resting army like a quiet breath. Soldiers lay wrapped in cloaks, their shields set aside, their spears resting nearby. Faces once alert and focused were now relaxed, softened by rest. Some slept deeply, while others drifted between waking and dreaming, comforted by the familiar presence of their companions. There was no sound of urgency, no call to rise, only the gentle signs of life continuing in peace. From time to time, distant footsteps could be heard. A watchman moved slowly along the edge of the camp, his pace measured and unhurried. Each step was careful, respectful of the sleeping men around him. He paused often, standing still as he listened to the night, eyes scanning the horizon before moving on again. His presence added to the sense of order, a quiet assurance that the night was being kept. Somewhere nearby, a tethered animal shifted its weight, leather straps creaking softly before settling again. A horse let out a low breath, then grew still. These small sounds blended easily into the stillness, becoming part of the calm rather than breaking it. Nothing jarred the senses. Nothing hurried the hours along. The camp reflected a kingdom momentarily at ease. Though danger lay ahead, it had not yet entered this space. For now, the men of Israel rested together, united in shared silence. Their strength was gathered not through action, but through rest, as bodies and minds recovered beneath the wide sky. The moon hung high, casting a pale glow across the ground. Shadows stretched gently from tent to tent, softening every shape. Even the weapons of war appeared harmless in this light, lying quietly beside those who would one day lift them again. In the night, they were simply objects resting in peace. Farther away, the hills stood dark and unmoving. They had witnessed many such nights, many such camps, rising and fading with the passing of time. They remained silent now, holding the stillness close, as though the land itself wished to offer calm to those who lay upon it. Within this quiet kingdom, time seemed to slow. The night did not rush toward morning. It lingered, allowing each breath, each sound, each moment to exist fully. The stars continued their slow journey overhead, marking the hours without haste. The army of Israel rested as one body, gathered beneath the same sky, unaware of the thoughts that weighed upon their king. For them, the night offered peace. The earth was firm beneath them, the air cool and steady, and the silence deep enough to hold every sleeping heart in quiet safety. While the camp rested beneath the stars, Saul remained awake, his thoughts turning once more toward the Lord. In the quiet hours before dawn, he sought guidance with a heart worn thin by waiting. He did not cry out loudly, nor did he act in haste. Instead, he waited in stillness, hoping that the silence itself might open into an answer. He prayed as he had prayed before, lifting his thoughts upward with care and reverence. His words were few, shaped by weariness rather than urgency. He asked for direction, for wisdom, for a sign that would show him the way forward. Yet the night remained unchanged. The air did not stir. The stars did not shift in response. The heavens held their peace. Saul waited through the long hours, attentive to every small sensation. He listened for a whisper that did not come. He searched for a stirring within his spirit, a sense of reassurance or warning, but his heart remained quiet. It was not a harsh silence, but a deep one, steady and unmoving, like still water that reflects nothing upon its surface. He remembered the ways answers had once come. Dreams had carried meaning. Prophets had spoken with clarity. Sacred signs had guided his steps. Now none of these appeared. Sleep passed him by, and even when his eyes closed, no vision formed. The night remained empty of message, and the quiet continued without interruption. Saul rose and walked slowly, his movements careful and restrained. He stood beneath the open sky, facing the darkness beyond the camp. The same stars that watched over the resting soldiers now looked down upon him. They shone without judgment, offering light but no instruction. Their steady presence only deepened the sense of waiting. He turned again to prayer, not with desperation, but with persistence. He sought the Lord through every means he knew to be right. He asked through the priests. He asked through sacred practice. Yet each attempt ended the same way. No answer came. The silence remained complete. This quiet was not filled with fear, but with absence. It was the stillness of a door that does not open, no matter how patiently one stands before it. Saul did not hear a word of rebuke or comfort. There was no sense of approval or warning. There was only the steady passage of time and the unbroken calm of the night. As the hours passed, Saul felt the weight of waiting settle more deeply within him. The lack of response did not come suddenly, but gradually, like evening settling into night. Each unanswered moment added to the stillness, until it surrounded him completely. He thought of the past, of moments when obedience had been clear and choices had been simple. Those memories did not accuse him. They merely existed, distant and quiet, like echoes fading into the hills. Saul remained where he was, standing between memory and uncertainty, waiting for direction that did not arrive. The camp around him remained peaceful. No cry broke the silence. No trumpet sounded. Life continued in rest, untouched by the unanswered questions of the king. The contrast was gentle but clear. While the people slept, Saul waited. While the land rested, his heart searched. The silence of heaven did not press down upon him with force. It rested lightly, yet firmly, like a still hand placed upon his thoughts. There was time to wait, and Saul waited fully, without rushing the night away. The stars continued their slow movement, marking the hours with quiet certainty. The breeze moved softly, carrying no message. Saul stood within that stillness, seeking the Lord with a heart open and attentive, yet receiving no reply. And so the night held its calm, and the heavens remained silent, as Saul continued to wait, listening closely to the quiet that surrounded him. Amid the stillness of the night, Saul's mind wandered gently to memories of the past. One memory in particular arose, like a soft wind moving through the branches of an ancient tree. It was a time when the king had acted decisively, guided by the words of the Lord and the counsel of the prophets. He had commanded the removal of mediums and spiritists from the land of Israel, sending them away so that the people would live in obedience and clarity. That decree had been spoken with confidence and authority, and it had once brought a sense of order and peace to the kingdom. Now, in the quiet hours, that memory returned not with judgment, but with reflection. Saul saw himself then as he had been, standing firmly in the midst of his people, a young king striving to uphold what he believed was right. The echo of his voice in those days seemed distant now, softened by the years and by the weight he carried in this moment. It was almost like watching a familiar scene through the soft haze of twilight, gentle and far away. He remembered the reasons for his command. The law of the Lord was clear. The people were not to seek guidance from those who called upon spirits or practiced the arts of the unseen. Such practices had been forbidden, and Saul had acted to protect both the hearts and minds of his people, ensuring that their lives remained free from confusion and danger. Those days had been filled with purpose, and there had been a quiet certainty in his actions. As he thought of that time, he could see the faces of those who had followed his orders. Some had gone reluctantly, others without complaint, yet all had left behind a silence that had marked the kingdom. Saul remembered the careful steps taken, the slow closing of doors to such practices, and the way life had returned to a steady rhythm afterward. The memory carried a sense of measured calm, not of triumph, but of responsibility fulfilled. Tonight, that memory carried a different weight. It was no longer simply a reminder of what had been done, but of what could not be undone. The world had shifted around him. The threats of enemies approached, the land held its quiet tension, and the heavens offered no counsel. Saul felt the distance between that former certainty and the present moment, a soft ache in the quiet of his thoughts. He had acted then with clarity and obedience, yet now he faced a night in which guidance seemed hidden behind an unbroken stillness. He recalled the lessons of that time as well. Removing the mediums had been more than an act of law. It had been an attempt to keep the hearts of the people focused, their minds untroubled by fear or uncertainty. It had required patience, discernment, and the courage to act even when the outcome was uncertain. Each step had been deliberate, every decision measured. In memory, he could almost feel the rhythm of that careful pace, as though it were breathing with him now in the darkness. The quiet night around him seemed to invite reflection. The winds whispered softly across the hills, carrying no message, yet suggesting the presence of time itself moving gently onward. Saul thought of the lives touched by his command, not with pride, but with awareness. There had been protection, yes, and order, but also a reminder that choices bore consequences, and that even acts done in obedience left marks that lingered quietly. Saul's mind lingered on the contrast between that time and the present night. Then, the kingdom had rested in the assurance of the Lord's guidance. Now, he stood in a darkness unbroken by counsel or answer. Yet the memory itself offered a strange comfort, a reminder that he had once acted rightly and with intention. Even if the silence of the heavens pressed upon him now, he knew he had not always walked without direction. The memory faded gently into the background of his thoughts, becoming one thread among many in the tapestry of the night. It reminded him that decisions, once made, live quietly in the past, shaping what comes without disturbing the calm of what remains. The quiet air of the camp, the soft glow of the fires, and the steady presence of the stars above seemed to echo this truth, holding the memory with him without disturbance, allowing him to feel its weight and its lessons softly and without rush. Even as the thought of his former command remained, it did not press upon him with urgency. It existed as a quiet companion, a gentle reflection of responsibility, obedience, and care. It did not demand action, only contemplation. Saul breathed slowly, taking in the stillness of the night, letting the memory move like a soft shadow across his heart, mingling with the calm that surrounded him, until it became part of the evening itself. The world outside remained at rest, and within him the echoes of that distant command settled into the rhythm of his own heartbeat, a reminder of the past that neither forced nor startled, but simply existed in harmony with the night and the quiet of the kingdom. The night deepened around Saul, and a quiet unease stirred within him. The stars above had shifted slowly across the sky, and the air was still, carrying only the faintest rustle of the camp settling into rest. Saul remained seated or standing in the dim light of the palace, his thoughts pressing him forward toward a decision he had long avoided. In the shadows, his voice was low, almost swallowed by the darkness, as he spoke to the servants who stood near him with careful attention. He inquired about a woman in Endor, a place whispered in tales of secrecy and ancient practices. His question was not hurried, but deliberate, carried with a hushed intensity, as though the very night might overhear and respond. Each word fell softly, spoken under the cloak of darkness, measured and careful, leaving space for thought to linger between sentences. Saul did not raise his voice. There was no rush in his manner, only a weighty intent that made the air seem even more still. The servants exchanged quiet glances, aware of the gravity in their king's request. They did not speak immediately, letting the silence stretch for a moment before offering their knowledge of the woman in Endor. Their words were gentle, their voices softened by respect and caution, careful not to disturb the quiet of the night or the fragile rhythm of Saul's thoughts. Each answer was given with care, as though the very act of speaking might ripple through the darkness. Saul listened intently, the lines of his face softening yet taut with concentration. He repeated the question, not in impatience, but to ensure clarity, to confirm the existence of the place and the woman who dwelled there. He spoke in tones that might have been mistaken for a murmur, low enough that only those nearest could hear, creating an intimacy with the moment, as if the night itself leaned in to hear. He asked about the nature of her abilities, what she had done, and what had been known of her actions in times past. Each inquiry was framed gently, like a careful exploration, and the servants responded with measured words, recounting what was needed without exaggeration or flourish. The room seemed to shrink in the quiet, holding the small, concentrated energy of conversation that might have been otherwise unnoticed in the bustle of day. As he spoke, Saul's thoughts wandered to the uncertainty that had brought him to this moment. He did not press for drama or spectacle, only for clarity. Every word was spoken as a soft step on a moonlit path, careful and mindful of the fragile peace around him. The servants, in turn, spoke with equal care, their voices falling into the spaces between heartbeats and shadow, forming a tapestry of hushed tones that filled the night. Saul considered what he had learned, allowing the knowledge to settle into the quiet of his mind. The woman in Endor was real, her presence known to those who had observed from afar, yet distant enough to retain mystery and reverence. The awareness of her existence moved through the room like a gentle wind, subtle and unseen, shaping the thoughts of all who remained nearby. He asked again, not urgently, but insistently in a quiet way, seeking to ensure there was no mistake, no misunderstanding in the hushed information he had gathered. Each response added a layer to the picture, and he received them calmly, absorbing the details, weighing the options, and letting the silence stretch between questions like soft intervals of music. The room remained still, the only sounds the faint movements of servants shifting, the gentle flicker of lamplight, and the occasional breath drawn in thought. Saul's voice was the center of the night, low and deliberate, a thread weaving carefully through the calm, binding together the quiet responses of those who served him. In asking about Endor, Saul's mind opened to possibilities he had not yet faced. He did not act rashly, but he felt the pressure of the unknown pressing softly against his thoughts. The night seemed to lean closer, holding the words spoken in a kind of reverent pause, as though every syllable might echo into the future in ways not yet visible. The servants continued to answer, their words cautious yet complete. Saul absorbed each detail with care, allowing himself to imagine the landscape, the house, the quiet presence of the woman herself, without hurrying the mind or disturbing the tranquillity of the evening. Every question, every answer, was like a slow step along a dimly lit path, each step deliberate, measured, and in harmony with the stillness that surrounded them. The conversation lingered, soft and unhurried. Saul's heart moved quietly between curiosity and resolve, his mind tracing the possibilities that the night allowed him to consider. In the dark, the palace seemed to shrink, the walls drawing closer, the silence expanding, holding the words like treasures, each one distinct and yet blending into the calm fabric of the night. And so the king continued to ask, the servants continued to answer, and the night held them together in its gentle embrace, every word spoken slowly, carefully, with a weight of intent softened by the hush of darkness. Saul rose from the quiet of his chambers, careful not to disturb the low-burning lamps or the sleeping servants around him. He moved with measured steps, each footfall soft against the cool stone floors, as though the night itself required gentle respect. Draped in a cloak to soften his features, he walked quietly through the palace gates, leaving behind the warmth and light, stepping into the expansive darkness that stretched toward Endor. The path ahead was lit only by the moon, casting pale silver across the rolling hills and scattered olive trees. Shadows stretched long and delicate, following the gentle curves of the terrain. Saul's movements were deliberate and slow, his cloak brushing lightly against his legs as he kept to the narrow trails that wound between low stone walls and patches of wild grass. Every step was considered, as though the earth itself might speak if disturbed too hastily. The countryside was hushed, filled with small, almost imperceptible sounds. A distant stream whispered as it traced its course over smooth rocks. Leaves shifted softly in the wind, and the occasional call of a night bird floated through the air, delicate and fleeting. Saul's ears listened to these sounds, not with alarm, but with a careful attention that kept him in tune with the quiet world around him. Small villages lay dormant along the way, their lights dimmed, windows shuttered, and streets empty. Occasionally, a dog stirred in its sleep, a faint rustle among the shadows, but Saul passed without notice. His presence was nearly invisible, absorbed into the soft rhythms of the night, moving as though part of the darkness itself. The cloak he wore did more than disguise his features. It seemed to blend him with the muted landscape, wrapping him in secrecy and stillness. The hills gradually rose toward Endor, their slopes gentle but steady. Saul adjusted his pace, keeping it calm and deliberate. There was no urgency in his steps, only purpose. The moon tracked overhead, illuminating his path in soft silver, revealing the winding trail and the rough textures of stone and soil. Occasionally, his hand brushed against low branches or rough bark, and he felt the cool texture of the night, a tangible connection to the land through which he moved. Along the path, wildflowers and low shrubs leaned quietly into the evening air. Their petals, still touched with dew, reflected the moonlight faintly. Saul walked between them with careful respect, not crushing a single stem, letting the soft presence of the flora guide the pace of his steps. Even the gentle scent of the earth after a recent rain seemed to remind him to move quietly, to honor the calm that surrounded him. At times he paused, listening. The night offered no answers, only observation. The soft wind through the trees, the faint rustle of distant animals, and the slow murmuring of the earth beneath his feet accompanied him like a gentle chorus. Saul's cloak shifted slightly with each movement, its weight a subtle reminder of the concealment that allowed him to move unseen, a shield against recognition or interruption. He crossed shallow streams by stepping on flat stones, careful to avoid the sound of splashing. He traced narrow ridges where the trail fell away gently into shadowed valleys. The path was familiar in its uncertainty, and Saul moved with calm awareness, feeling the rise and fall of the earth beneath him, allowing the quiet rhythm to carry him forward steadily. Occasionally, the silhouette of a distant tree marked the horizon. Its branches spread wide, standing in quiet patience as the moonlight kissed each leaf and twig. Saul's eyes traced these shapes, using them to guide his way, while his mind remained focused on the task ahead, thinking softly about the woman in Endor, the instructions he had received from his servants, and the stillness that surrounded him. The further he walked, the more the night seemed to embrace him. Shadows softened at the edges, the world condensed into silver and black, and his movements became part of the natural rhythm of the landscape. There was no noise of clattering armor or hurried footsteps, only the steady, almost meditative pace of a man moving carefully through the world while hidden by its quiet. By the time he neared the outskirts of Endor, the village slept beneath a blanket of calm darkness. Its cottages were silent. Smoke from distant hearths curled lazily into the night, and the soft glow of the moon touched every roof and path. Saul's cloak and careful steps allowed him to approach unnoticed, his presence nearly absorbed into the tranquillity of the land. Every movement, every breath, was attuned to the night. The rustle of the wind, the faint shift of leaves, and the occasional soft cry of an animal in the distance all became part of his journey. He moved like a shadow, calm and unseen, crossing the final stretch toward the dwelling of the woman with the utmost care and quiet patience, each step carrying him closer into the heart of Endor without disturbing the delicate stillness of the world around him. Saul approached the small village of Endor as the moonlight bathed the paths in silver. Nestled among gentle hills and clusters of trees, he saw the modest dwelling of the woman he had sought. It was a simple home, built of stone and wood, with smoke curling lightly from its chimney and the soft glow of a lamp through a small window. The house seemed quiet and still, as if it had grown into the earth itself, settled and patient in the calm of the night. The woman moved slowly within her home, her figure framed by the warm light that spilled from the doorway. She was careful in her movements, each step deliberate, her gestures soft and unobtrusive. She tended her small hearth and the simple belongings of her house with a sense of quiet focus, mindful of the silence that filled the evening. Every motion she made was measured, as though she understood the delicate nature of her surroundings and the importance of preserving the calm of the night. Outside, the air was still, carrying the faint scent of earth and wood smoke. A gentle breeze moved the branches of nearby trees, causing leaves to brush softly against one another. The world around her seemed to hold its breath in gentle observance, embracing the quiet that surrounded the dwelling. There was no sudden movement, no harsh sound, only the subtle rhythm of life in harmony with the night. The woman's face, framed by strands of hair catching the silver light, bore a calm attentiveness. Her eyes, bright but soft, reflected the lamp's glow and the moon above, showing a mind careful yet welcoming. There was wisdom in her expression, a knowledge born of quiet reflection and years of mindful living. Her hands, when they moved, did so with precision and patience, touching objects with respect, handling them as if the world itself would respond to any abruptness. Her home, though humble, held a sense of order and simplicity. Pots and baskets were arranged with care. Small shelves bore carefully kept items, each one resting in its place. There was no clutter, no haste, only the gentle organization of a life lived in rhythm with the natural world. The walls seemed to echo the stillness, carrying the soft sounds of her breathing, the faint scrape of her hand across a wooden surface, and the quiet crackle of the hearth fire. She paused at the window, glancing at the dimly lit path that led through the hills. The moon cast gentle shadows across the ground, revealing only the soft contours of the terrain. She moved back toward the hearth with measured steps, leaving no trace of disturbance behind her. Even in her caution, there was a sense of peace, a calm rooted in familiarity with her surroundings and the gentle flow of the night. The doorway of the home framed the quiet world outside. Beyond it, the village slept, and the hills rose and fell under the pale glow of the moon. Small animals moved softly through the underbrush, their presence barely audible, blending seamlessly into the rhythm of the evening. The wind carried faint whispers of grass brushing against stone, of branches swaying without sound, of the subtle movements of night that existed without hurry. The woman's demeanor suggested both awareness and gentleness. She did not act hastily, nor did she appear startled by the soft sounds that approached her home. Every gesture was calm, measured, as though the night itself had taught her to move lightly and to observe without intrusion. She embodied a quiet patience, one that allowed life and surroundings to unfold without fear or rush. Within the small house, the hearth fire crackled lightly, casting a warm glow that softened the shadows around the room. The flames danced gently, illuminating her careful movements and lending a sense of serene continuity to her actions. Each moment passed with quiet intention, every sound and sight harmonizing with the night's calm. She tended to her surroundings with care, arranging small items, adjusting the hearth, and ensuring the soft lamplight continued to guide the room with steady warmth. There was no tension in her manner, only the soft precision of someone who understood the importance of gentle living, of moving within the world in quiet attentiveness. The woman of Endor, in her humble home, seemed almost part of the still night. The light and shadows moved across her walls and hands, mingling with the moonlight and the faint rustle of the earth outside. She was aware of the silence beyond her doors, yet her actions remained unhurried, careful, and steady. Her presence blended with the calm of the night, creating an atmosphere of gentle vigilance and peaceful attentiveness that welcomed the world into quiet observation. Every movement she made, every soft breath she drew, carried a sense of serenity. There was no alarm, no haste, only the quiet flow of life in a simple home. The air, the earth, and the small dwelling itself seemed to pause in gentle reverence, holding space for the careful steps of the woman who moved quietly among her lamps, her hearth, and the subtle shadows that stretched softly across her walls and floor. Saul paused at the doorway, his presence almost blending with the shadows. The woman looked up, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of curiosity and caution. He did not rush forward, nor did he speak immediately. Instead, he allowed the quiet to linger, giving space for the stillness of the night to settle around them both. Each breath, each movement, seemed measured against the soft rhythm of the firelight that flickered across the walls. At last, Saul spoke in a low, deliberate tone. His words were gentle, careful, carrying neither command nor demand. He asked if she could perform the act he had sought, his voice almost a whisper, shaped by respect for her skill and the quiet of the evening. The words floated lightly in the room, unhurried, leaving room for her to consider before answering. The woman studied him for a long moment. Her expression held no alarm, only a quiet assessment, as though weighing the intent behind his request. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear, measured like a slow stream flowing through stones. She asked why he sought her counsel now, at such a late hour, and why he had come in disguise. Her tone carried curiosity, tempered by the careful caution of one accustomed to secrecy and careful judgment. Saul did not hurry his explanation. He spoke with gentleness, choosing each word with care. He acknowledged the darkness of the hour, the need for discretion, and the uncertainty that pressed upon him. He shared only what was necessary, leaving the rest in the quiet between their voices, allowing the night itself to carry the weight of unsaid thoughts. The woman listened intently, her gaze steady and thoughtful. She did not interrupt, but her slight nods and the subtle shift of her hands indicated understanding. Her responses were deliberate, ensuring that her words were both truthful and measured, neither embellishing nor diminishing the gravity of the conversation. Every phrase seemed to settle into the space between them, soft and deliberate, like gentle footsteps along a smooth path. Saul's tone remained calm and reflective, almost meditative, as he expressed his need for guidance. There was no impatience in his voice, no demand for immediate answers. Instead, he conveyed trust in her discretion and care, allowing her the dignity of choice in how to proceed. The words were exchanged slowly, each sentence forming a quiet bridge between their minds, carrying a shared understanding into the stillness of the room. The woman replied with equal care. She spoke softly of what she could do, of the limitations and the boundaries she observed. Her words were gentle, framed with respect for the unseen forces she worked with, and carried a weight that was felt rather than heard. Each sound she made was a careful vibration in the calm night, blending with the crackle of the hearth and the soft shadows that moved across the walls. Saul considered her words carefully, allowing them to sink into the quiet of his thoughts. He did not press or question in haste. Instead, he absorbed her explanations, reflecting on them in measured silence. The room seemed to expand around them, holding each word as if it were a fragile object, ensuring that it remained intact and undisturbed in the hush of the evening. There was a rhythm to the exchange, soft and steady, like the ebb and flow of a gentle tide. One spoke, then the other, with pauses long enough to allow understanding to form. No voice rose above the other, and no movement disturbed the gentle balance. The firelight flickered, painting their faces in gentle tones of warmth and shadow, and the quiet seemed to deepen, holding the conversation safely in its calm embrace. Questions were asked softly, answers given with care, each phrase imbued with the subtle tension of trust and the quiet weight of secrecy. Saul's need for insight met the woman's measured skill, and between them formed a still, delicate dialogue that neither rushed nor disturbed the night. At times neither spoke, yet the silence was not empty. It held reflection, thought, and the gentle pulse of understanding. The woman's eyes remained steady, her hands resting calmly, while Saul's posture conveyed patience and attentiveness. Every detail of the room, the glow of the lamp, the shadows along the walls, the slow rhythm of the fire, joined in the soft resonance of their careful conversation. The dialogue moved forward slowly, each exchange precise and intentional, yet gentle in its flow. It was an interaction built on caution, trust, and quiet curiosity, the kind of careful communication that requires stillness and respect. Their words traced invisible lines in the night, connecting them through the weight of intention and the subtle cadence of measured speech. Even as the conversation deepened, there was no urgency, no pressure. The room seemed to breathe with them, holding each whispered sentence and soft reply in the gentle space between heartbeats. Every word, every pause, every subtle gesture contributed to a calm atmosphere, where understanding grew slowly, naturally, and with reverence for the quiet of the evening. The woman moved with quiet deliberation, her hands steady as she prepared the small space for the act Saul had requested. The hearth fire cast gentle, flickering light across the room, softening every shadow and illuminating the calm determination in her movements. There was no rush, no sense of urgency, only a slow and measured preparation, as though each motion itself was a prayer to the stillness of the night. Saul remained near, his posture attentive but unstrained, observing the care with which she worked. His cloak brushed lightly against the floor, and his breathing was slow, almost synchronized with the faint crackle of the fire. The air between them was heavy with quiet expectation, yet it was not tense. It was a reverent calm, a shared understanding of the gravity of what was about to occur. The woman spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper, asking Saul to remain patient and respectful of the process. He nodded, the lines of his face softened in the low lamplight. There was no fear in his expression, only an inward focus, a quiet preparation for the moment when the unseen would be made present. Every sense seemed heightened, yet gently restrained, as though the night itself had hushed the world around them. She began to call upon Samuel, the prophet who had long guided Israel and spoken the words of the Lord. Her words were slow, deliberate, and filled with solemnity. They carried no force or command, only an invitation, a respectful summoning of a presence that was greater than either of them. Each syllable was chosen with care, pronounced softly but clearly, as though spoken too loudly might disturb the delicate balance of the moment. Saul watched, leaning slightly forward, his hands resting calmly at his sides. There was awe in his posture, a quiet acknowledgment of the sacred nature of what was occurring. The soft lamplight played across his features, revealing the gentle intensity in his gaze. He did not speak, for there was no need. The moment demanded only attention and the measured patience of one waiting for something beyond ordinary understanding. The room seemed to grow stiller, as though the walls themselves were listening. The faint rustle of wind through the open window, the soft crackling of the hearth, and the subtle movements of the woman as she continued her work formed a quiet accompaniment. Each sound blended seamlessly into the reverent atmosphere, heightening the sense that something profound was quietly unfolding. The woman's voice continued, calling Samuel with unwavering focus. She maintained a tone of respect and gentleness, acknowledging the sacred presence she sought. There was no dramatization, no attempt to force the unseen into view, only a careful, deliberate reaching outward through prayerful words and soft entreaty. Each phrase seemed suspended in the air, lingering long enough to allow Saul to feel the gravity of the act, yet light enough to preserve the calm of the night. Saul's heart moved slowly, not in panic, but in reflective anticipation. His eyes softened, his breathing steady, as he absorbed the solemnity of the moment. He sensed the stillness surrounding them, the hush that had fallen over the room, and the faint sense that something greater than himself was responding to the call. The quiet was thick with reverence, holding every sound, every motion, every whisper with deliberate care. The woman paused briefly between words, letting the silence stretch. In that interval, Saul felt the weight of waiting more deeply, not as tension, but as presence. It was the kind of awareness that comes when one recognizes the sacred, the unseen, and the eternal quietly threading through the ordinary world. He stood without movement, perfectly aligned with the hush, letting it settle around him like a protective veil. When her voice resumed, it was even softer, more deliberate, yet still carrying the intent of the summoning. Saul sensed a shift in the room, subtle but profound. The air seemed to tremble faintly with a presence that could not be seen but could be felt. The reverence of the act filled every corner, wrapping around both of them, binding their attention to the quiet miracle of the moment. Time itself seemed to slow. Each breath, each soft word, each flicker of firelight became magnified in its importance. Saul's awareness expanded with the stillness, the hush deepening as the call to Samuel continued with patience and care. Every motion of the woman, every measured sound, contributed to the sacred rhythm, as though the night itself had been invited to hold its breath in observance. The moment carried an almost tangible weight of awe, calm and profound. Saul did not move to hasten it. He remained entirely present, attuned to the soft cadence of the summoning, aware of the significance without fear, filled only with quiet reflection and solemn anticipation. The night wrapped itself around the room, gentle and unbroken, holding the act and its intent in the serene space between sound and shadow. The call to Samuel continued slowly, deliberately, each word a soft bridge between the human and the unseen. Saul felt the depth of the moment in every fibre of his being, a hushed acknowledgment of presence, of history, and of the sacred interaction quietly unfolding before him. A soft, almost imperceptible shift filled the room, and Saul felt the presence of Samuel as though a gentle wind had passed through the still air. There was no sudden light, no startling sound, only a quiet settling that drew the attention inward. In that subtle change, the prophet's presence was revealed, dignified and serene, carrying a calm weight that seemed to anchor the space around them. Samuel appeared not as a figure of urgency, but as one of quiet authority. His form radiated stillness, his posture upright yet relaxed, conveying the confidence of one who had walked faithfully with the Lord through countless days. There was no harshness in his gaze, only a gentle steadiness that seemed to stretch beyond the room, touching even the quiet corners of the night. His voice, when it came, was smooth and measured, carrying the resonance of experience and calm reflection. It was steady and timeless, a sound that did not demand attention but invited it naturally, like a soft echo through a vast, silent valley. Each word seemed to linger in the air, settling slowly into Saul's awareness, filling the room with a serene presence that calmed the heart and mind alike. Samuel's eyes were attentive but gentle, meeting Saul's with a quiet recognition of the king's burdens. There was neither reproach nor judgment, only an understanding that came from one who had observed the paths of men and the unfolding of events with patience and care. His gaze offered reassurance in its steadiness, an unspoken message that the moment was sacred and that guidance, though delicate, could be received. Saul noticed the subtle details of Samuel's presence, the slow, purposeful movements of his hands, the soft cadence of his breathing, the quiet strength that emanated without need for display. Every element of the prophet seemed imbued with a calm authority, a natural reflection of the life he had lived in service and devotion. The air itself seemed to hold its breath around him, amplifying the sense of peace and order he brought to the room. The firelight flickered gently across Samuel's features, illuminating the lines of experience and wisdom without harshness. Shadows softened at the edges, blending seamlessly into the warmth of the hearth and the quiet glow of the lamp. The room felt suspended in time, a moment held between the ordinary and the sacred, the presence of Samuel grounding the space in tranquil reflection. When he spoke again, the words carried weight, but not in force or urgency. They flowed like a calm stream, steady and measured, each phrase shaped with care to convey guidance without alarm. Saul listened, his body still, absorbing every sound, feeling the subtle power of the prophet's calm authority ripple gently through the room. The steadiness of Samuel's voice seemed to slow the passage of time. The flicker of the lamp, the soft crackle of the hearth, and the faint sounds of the night outside merged with his speech, creating an atmosphere where every moment felt deliberate and held. Saul's thoughts quieted in response, each concern and hesitation softened under the weight of the prophet's presence. Samuel's aura carried a timeless quality, as if he belonged both to this moment and to all the moments he had ever guided. There was no hurry in his gestures, no abruptness in his speech, only the quiet dignity of one who understood the rhythms of human hearts and the delicate interplay of destiny and choice. His presence itself seemed to reassure, like a steady hand resting lightly on the shoulder, offering guidance without pressure. Saul felt the room settle around them, the small dwelling in Endor transformed into a sanctuary of soft illumination and calm reflection. Samuel's voice, gentle yet authoritative, filled the quiet with clarity. It carried the stillness of the night and the wisdom of the years, creating a space where thought could move freely but with restraint, and where the presence of the sacred was understood without need for spectacle. Even the shadows seemed to align with him, folding gently into the corners of the room as if drawn into the rhythm of his calm. His movements, slow and deliberate, reinforced the sense of quiet order, each gesture harmonizing with the space rather than disturbing it. Saul's attention rested fully on the prophet, absorbing the serene dignity that seemed to emanate effortlessly. The interaction between them was subtle, a meeting of presence rather than mere conversation. Samuel's calm steadiness provided both comfort and clarity, a reminder that guidance need not shout to be heard, and that authority could exist in harmony with quiet. Every word and motion reinforced the sacredness of the night, and every breath taken in that room felt measured in tune with the slow, reflective rhythm that Samuel carried so naturally. In that serene space, Saul felt both the weight of his responsibilities and the gentle reassurance of a guiding presence. Samuel's dignified form, his steady voice, and the tranquil authority that filled the room created a quiet harmony, a soft resonance that allowed understanding to unfold gently and naturally, steeped in calm reflection and the quiet awe of the moment. Samuel's gaze remained steady, calm, and filled with the quiet dignity of one who had walked faithfully with the Lord. His voice, soft and deliberate, carried into the room like a gentle wind over still waters. He spoke slowly, each word weighted with meaning yet delivered without haste, as though the very air itself paused to listen. He reminded Saul of the path he had chosen and the consequences that had been set in motion long before that night. There was no reproach in his tone, only the soft clarity of inevitability. Each phrase unfolded like a quiet current, carrying the understanding that certain outcomes are bound by decisions already made, and that these ripples travel naturally to their destined place. Saul listened, his posture attentive, every breath synchronized with the gentle cadence of Samuel's words. The firelight flickered softly across the walls, illuminating the prophet's features and deepening the sense of calm reverence. Samuel spoke of the days ahead, not in alarm, but with the slow inevitability of one who has seen the unfolding of many lives. There was a quiet authority in his message, not forceful, but firm, like the steady flow of a river that cannot be diverted. He conveyed that the kingdom would face its trials, and that Saul's decisions had set in motion the patterns that could not now be reversed. Samuel's voice remained calm and reflective, emphasizing understanding and awareness rather than fear. Every word was measured, each pause deliberate, giving space for Saul to absorb the truth in the hush of the night. The room itself seemed to soften around them, the small hearth casting shadows that danced lightly across Samuel's steady figure. The message was one of consequence, but it was gentle in its delivery. There was a sense of inevitability, a recognition that life moves in patterns beyond human control, and yet there was no panic, only reflective acceptance. Saul felt the weight of the words settle quietly upon him. The calm authority in Samuel's tone allowed him to receive the message fully, without flinching or tension. The inevitability conveyed was not harsh or cruel, only factual and serene, like the slow passage of seasons or the quiet rise and fall of the tides. The prophet continued, reminding Saul of the divine order and the natural unfolding of events that had been set in motion through his life and choices. His voice was consistent and unwavering, soft yet commanding in its steadiness. Each word carried clarity, forming a reflective rhythm that guided Saul's thoughts gently, without force, through understanding and acceptance. In the hush of the night, the room held the quiet gravity of the message, yet it remained peaceful. The flickering shadows and the gentle warmth of the fire framed the moment, giving weight to the words without urgency or alarm. Saul absorbed each phrase, allowing it to rest within him slowly, as Samuel's calm voice carried the wisdom of foresight and the gentle inevitability of what must come to pass. The night outside remained still, the moonlight soft on the hills, the distant trees swaying gently. Within the small house, every sound was muted, every breath slow and reflective, as Saul listened to the prophet. Samuel's words were a quiet stream of guidance, moving steadily and calmly, filling the space with understanding, reflection, and the gentle recognition of life's inescapable currents. Saul sank slowly onto a low stool near the hearth, feeling the cool weight of the stone beneath him. His shoulders relaxed, heavy from the journey, the sleepless nights, and the quiet tension that had accompanied him for so long. The firelight flickered across his face, casting soft shadows that mirrored the exhaustion in his eyes, yet there was a calmness now, a stillness that had not been there before. He rested his hands on his knees, letting them fall naturally, free from the need to act or command. The cloak he had worn so carefully during his journey slipped from his shoulders, softening around him like a protective embrace. Each breath came slow and measured, his chest rising and falling with a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the quiet cadence of the room. The weight of Samuel's words settled gently within him, pressing neither sharply nor abruptly, but with a steady, undeniable presence. Saul felt the inevitability of the message, the knowledge of consequences, and the understanding of the paths he had chosen, folding into his mind without struggle. There was no panic, no resistance, only the soft acceptance of what had been gently revealed. His eyes drifted toward the flickering flames, watching the light play across the walls and the floor. The warmth of the fire mingled with the cool stillness of the night, wrapping him in a cocoon of calm that balanced the heaviness he felt. Every muscle in his body relaxed gradually, each tendril of tension loosening as he let the truth of the moment rest over him like a quiet veil. Saul's thoughts slowed, no longer racing with concern or planning. The steady presence of Samuel, the soft illumination of the hearth, and the gentle hush of the night allowed his mind to drift into reflection. He was weary, yet there was a serene acceptance in the weariness, a recognition that the patterns of life moved beyond his control, and that the quiet understanding of these truths brought a strange peace. The room remained hushed, the shadows steady, the soft glow of the lamp and fire mingling in gentle harmony. Saul leaned back slightly, his head tilting with the weight of calm resignation, feeling the stillness of the night settle around him. The burden of kingship, of choices and outcomes, pressed gently upon him, yet he received it with measured patience, embracing the quiet exhaustion and the soft, reflective acceptance that came in the wake of Samuel's presence. He closed his eyes briefly, not in sleep, but in surrender to the calm of the moment, letting the room, the night, and the fire hold him in their gentle rhythm. The weariness of body and mind became part of the quiet tapestry of the evening, folding seamlessly into the peace that lingered softly around him. The room remained quiet, filled with the gentle warmth of the fire and the soft glow of the lamp. Saul sat in stillness, his mind calm after the weight of reflection and the steady presence of Samuel. In this moment, the lessons of patience and the careful seeking of guidance rested softly in the air, weaving through the quiet like a gentle, unseen thread. He considered the importance of obedience, not as a harsh demand, but as a quiet alignment with the path laid before him. The stillness allowed him to feel the subtle truth of listening carefully, of moving thoughtfully through choices, and of seeking counsel with reverence and care. There was a quiet power in this awareness, a calm strength born of understanding the right ways to approach the unseen and the unknown. Saul's gaze drifted to the small shadows cast across the walls, each one moving gently with the flicker of the fire. The night outside held the same gentle rhythm, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant whisper of a hill or stream, all blending into a seamless calm. In this shared quiet, the lessons of the night became almost tangible. Patience, trust, and the mindful seeking of guidance flowed like a soft current through the still air. He allowed his thoughts to release, letting the burdens of the day and the weight of decisions dissolve quietly into the calm. The room, the fire, and the gentle hush of the night seemed to carry them away, leaving only the sense of steady reflection and gentle acceptance. Each breath was slow and measured, a quiet rhythm that mirrored the tranquility surrounding him. In this peaceful closing, there was an invitation to reflect on the lessons softly held within the story, the value of patience, the importance of seeking counsel in the right ways, and the quiet power of obedience guided by understanding and care. The night itself seemed to hold these lessons tenderly, as if every shadow and flicker of light conspired to wrap them around the heart in comfort. A sense of calm lingered in the air, extending gently outward, carrying the soft encouragement to carry this reflection into the coming hours. In the quiet, there was room to share and connect, to invite thoughts gently to flow, to comment, to subscribe, and to share this peaceful experience with others who may wish to drift through such calm stories. The evening held its hush, steady and enduring, offering the perfect space for thought to rest and for the mind to settle. Obedience, patience, and careful guidance became not distant ideals but soft companions in the quiet, letting the heart breathe easily, the mind release slowly, and the world outside settle into gentle, untroubled stillness once more.